Utter darkness and a restless sea set the stage for what many historians consider the fiercest and most desperate naval battle, not only of World War II, but of modern maritime warfare. After the outdated Clemson-class destroyer USS Borie and a Kriegsmarine Type 7C U-boat disabled each other's primary weapons in the middle of the North Atlantic, the conflict had to be settled in a far more rudimentary way, by ramming each other into submission. In the last fateful collision, the two belligerent vessels became locked together. Desperate sailors scrambled onto their respective decks and opened fire at enemy forces less than a few yards away. Using handguns and whatever weapons they could manage, the two factions fought until the end. Steam, fire, and roaring waves engulfed the seamen. Muzzle flashes and the destroyer's searchlights were the only sources of light during the fierce encounter. Meanwhile, another frantic battle raged below decks inside USS Borie. As sailors confronted the Nazi forces above them, the ship's crew struggled to keep the vessel afloat after the devastating clash had perforated the hull. Time was running out. Both ships were heavily damaged, and the savage skirmish continued for an hour until only one would be left standing. By November 1943, the Allied fleets in the Battle of the Atlantic were finally turning the tide. After years of defensive escort tactics, guiding convoys from America to Europe and hoping they would not be targeted by enemy U-boats, the Allies were ready to go on the offensive. German U-boat numbers had been declining, and the rapid growth and modernization of the Royal Canadian Navy had cornered the Kriegsmarine, making their mission to disrupt supply lines more difficult. The swift production and deployment of American light aircraft carriers also helped foil U-boat attacks. With air support from these carriers, the days when entire convoys could be obliterated by Nazi offensives were over. With the pressure easing, Allied High Command began sending fleets out to hunt. However, the most advanced ships still remained tied to escort duty because keeping supplies flowing to Britain was a top priority. Many of the ships sent to search for and destroy Nazi submarines were not top of the line. USS Borie was one of them, a Clemson-class destroyer designed in 1916 and built in 1920. Borie's technology and capabilities were outdated. A flaw in her fantail design meant she could not make tight turns, hardly ideal for anti-submarine warfare. Nevertheless, Commander Lieutenant Charles Harris Hutchins and his UA crew were eager to leave escort duties behind and hunt German submarines for the first time. 1943, the 30-year-old Lieutenant Hutchins was the youngest destroyer commander in the U.S. Navy. After successfully escorting a convoy to Casablanca in June 1943, Borie was assigned to escort another convoy westward, spearheaded by a light aircraft carrier commanded by Captain Arnold J. Isbell. Soon after the convoy left port, Isbell relayed his plan to Hutchins. They were not just escorting cargo ships, but actively seeking U-boat concentrations to destroy. Isbell's decision marked a dramatic change in Atlantic strategy. The idea was to complete escort missions while striking at the heart of the German U-boat campaign. The novel tactics were helped by new high-frequency direction-finding equipment, nicknamed Huff Duff by sailors, which made detection and identification of submarine groups more accurate and reliable. In addition, Allied forces had broken the German Enigma code, allowing ships to intercept U-boat transmissions without the enemy realizing. From then on, Isbell and Hutchins worked together in a specialized unit with a single purpose: to hunt down U-boats before the U-boats hunted them. The change in strategy paid off. On the return trip to Casablanca, the task force sank up to 6 enemy U-boats and damaged 4 others, without suffering significant damage. One victory followed another, and morale in the task force rose. Then, on October 30th, 1943, the unit encountered a small group of submarines and quickly engaged, sinking one before it could submerge. 2 others escaped. Isbell suspected that one fleeing U-boat was a milk cow, a larger submarine designed to resupply smaller U-boats. Knowing how valuable such a target was, he did not want it to get away. He sent USS Borie after the U-boat, and the destroyer's crew was ecstatic at the chance to hunt a prestigious target on their own. Borie steamed toward the area of last contact at sunset, but nothing could prepare the crew for what awaited them, a battle for the ages. On November 1st, 1943, as the sun sank beneath the horizon and the sea grew restless, the lone U.S. destroyer combed the waters for furtive submarines. Then, at 1:53 a.m., Borie received a sonar contact. The contact came from the Kriegsmarine U-405, a Type semi-sea submarine, a modern iteration of the classic German design. The U-boat crew was experienced, and her highly decorated commander, Ralph Heinrich Hoffmann, had sunk numerous Allied ships during his years in the German Navy. As if sensing the tension, the sea grew wilder, with waves reaching up to 30 feet. The American ship's deck was soaked and visibility was limited by spray and the night's darkness. Acting before the submarine could react, Borie dropped a pattern of depth charges, but an unfortunate malfunction caused them all to fall at once, leaving the ship without any other submergible explosives. The explosions below the waves lifted the destroyer and made the waters rage ferociously around the American ship. The blasts, as daunting as they were, only drew the submarine to the surface and made it unfit to submerge again. When Borie's crew spotted the U-boat, they turned and began an intense pursuit. The German crew opened fire with their anti-aircraft gun, but Borie's battery proved more effective. After a few precise shots, the submarine's gun was destroyed. The Germans reacted quickly and began to turn so they could bring their torpedo tubes to bear on the American ship. If they could strike Borie with one of their powerful torpedoes, they might end the battle immediately. Hutchins' sharp intuition served him well. He realized what the Germans were attempting. Though crippled in tight turning by her fantail, Borie still managed to maneuver and avoid the U-boat's bow. Seeing an opening, Hutchins decided the best chance to thwart the torpedoes was to ram the submarine on the side and hopefully sink her in one blow. As the destroyer closed at ramming speed, she continued to fire on the German vessel. Commander Hoffmann made a last-ditch attempt to evade, but both ships collided bow to bow at an angle. Borie penetrated the submarine's hull and became lodged in the U-boat's frame, so close that the destroyer's primary weapon became useless. With the U-boat's anti-aircraft gun gone and her torpedoes out of reach, the exhausted crews were left to fend for themselves. Cracking steel, gunfire, and desperate shouting filled the night as sailors used every weapon they could reach: sidearms, pistols, and shotguns. Even revolvers were turned in case of mutiny. The Germans reportedly used hand grenades, while a daring American sailor is said to have dispatched a Nazi by throwing a knife. Flare pistols arced between the two decks. Below decks on the American destroyer, another life-or-death struggle unfolded. One of the submarine's diving planes had punctured Borie's hull during the impact, and the engine rooms quickly flooded. The crew frantically tried to stop the inundation, blocking the breach with mattresses and anything at hand. Engine room staff were half submerged. Still, one engine remained active, and the turbine kept running for a while. After 10 excruciating minutes, the U-boat freed herself from the destroyer and quickly turned to aim. Torpedoes at Borie. The Germans fired but missed. Back on the American vessel, the main gun became usable again and unleashed a torrent of fire around the damaged submarine. The U-boat attempted to escape. Hutchins feigned withdrawal, letting the Nazis believe they might get away, then turned off the searchlights while tracking the damaged U-boat on sonar. As Borie closed again, she switched the lights back on and the fight resumed. The submarine fired another torpedo, which missed again. The destroyer answered by firing her remaining depth charges from a side-mounted launcher. The explosives further damaged the U-boat. The Nazis tried one last offensive maneuver, attempting to ram the destroyer, but as the submarine closed, Borie's main gun finally struck true, disabling the engine. The submarine came up out of the water and lay just a few yards from the Americans. Now totally disabled and an easy target, the U-boat was pummeled. Borie's main gun hit the rear exhaust port, and the few remaining German sailors surrendered. A few minutes later, at 2:53 a.m., U-405 sank and exploded beneath the waves. Hutchins later recalled a yell that went up from all hands the moment the submarine went down, a shout he joked probably could be heard in Berlin. The victory was decisive. No German sailors survived, while American casualties were relatively few. Borie, however, was damaged beyond repair and was still sinking rapidly. A few hours later, Hutchins ordered his crew to abandon ship and scuttle her. The sailors, still in high spirits despite everything, awaited rescue in lifeboats. Hutchins would eventually receive the Navy Cross for his bravery, and the clash became remembered as a turning point, the beginning of the end of Germany's U-boat supremacy.